One thing I want to point out is we're not roofers. We don't roof professionally. And if you want to learn how to install a TPO roof, this isn't the video for you. We want to talk about, a general idea of how it goes down and some considerations to make, why we chose TPO, how we're going to incorporate it into our solar package, and how much we expect to pay for it. Welcome back to Bryn Mawr, guys, and this is an awesome day because we have a roof. This is one of the first things we want to knock out, and it's finally happened. It was not easy though, and let me talk about why. So, if you guys have been following along, this is like a tale of two buildings. This side, total mess. This side was maintained pretty nicely. One layer of torch down roofing over here versus 8.5 layers on this side. It was almost 4 inches thick of roofing material, and that was a pain to demo. We went 50 days with no rain in Philadelphia, got our building permit, got started, and right when we ripped the roof off, got 4 straight days of rain. So we were a mess inside. We were trying to save the floors, almost sure that we can, but one of those things in construction where, stuff gets rained on, stuff dries off. But we took 6 days with a small crew to demo this roof, and that was a giant expense for us. $1,500 for a dumpster fee and about $5,000 in labor just to get the roof off before we got this beautiful TPO warm roof put on. Before we go into what it exactly takes to get a roof like this, I want to talk about why we chose a TPO warm roof. And TPO is kind of characteristically this white, bright, reflective surface on top of the building. Generally, we like darker roofs. It's a little counterintuitive, but we like to keep the roof deck warm, especially in the wintertime, to really minimize condensation risks. We're getting around that by doing 5.5 inches of reclaimed polyiso, which we have some really cool shots of going in right here. Pain to get up, we got it reclaimed, and that's gonna do a lot for the thermal efficiency of this building. We chose a TPO roof for a couple of different reasons. For us, it was really between TPO or EPDM. Those are both two commercial rubber roof styles that are pretty common in our area. EPDM actually has a little bit longer durability expectancy. The lifespan is around 50 or 60 years for EPDM. TPO, which is what you see here, might be 30, 40 years. So you would think that the clear choice would be EPDM. This hopefully is going to be able to be involved in our solar roof system, and as part of that, a nice tax write-off. So the solar systems that we're going to spec have bottom reflectivity built into their price, which means they not only get energy from the sun coming up top, but when the sun hits the roof deck and bounces back up, you'll also get some energy pickup right there. So that means we can write off this roof as part of our tax incentives for going solar. We still have to check with our accountant on that, but that's one of the reasons why we chose TPO over EPDM. EPDM is darker, lasts longer, and we really like EPDM for the fact that it keeps the roof deck warm in the colder months. That's when condensation is one of the biggest risks. So one of the factors, we kind of weighed the risks, and hopefully we'll get a $35,000 write-off for what this roof actually cost us. So TPO is relatively straightforward to install. Think of it like a giant pond liner, but a little bit more durable. So our roofing crews actually cut this on the ground to length, so they didn't have to get a big roll craned up on here. First step though was getting the polyiso installed. We had 190 sheets of this reclaimed polyiso that we got off of Craigslist actually, but it came from a factory in North Carolina. So that got screwed down, alternating the seams so there's no thermal break, and the reason we did that was for a continuous layer of insulation. We need to hit R49 roughly for this ceiling assembly. We can't really do that in a joist base without dropping the ceiling a crazy amount. So right now we have about R6.5 per inch times 5. We have R30 right off the bat. So we can get away with an R21 bat in the ceiling, which we do have space for, and hit and coat the insulation. And it's actually going to perform better because the polyiso blanket on top of this roof doesn't have the same thermal bridging you get by insulating stud bays. So right there, that's a giant win for us. We also didn't reframe this roof. The roof decking was in pretty solid condition, save for a few areas that we did redo. But what the 2 layers of foam really helps us do is make a nice gradual slope, and any imperfections that are bound to exist in the older structure kind of get absorbed in the way the foam compresses or stands up freely. Our polyiso is screwed into the decking of the roof. We tried our very best to hit studs. We didn't get them in every case. Every 18 inches or so, we have a screw with a pretty beefy washer that goes down into the decking of the roof. You can kind of see the outlines. Here's a washer, here's a washer, here's a washer. So the foam really helps distribute weight from when we're walking on the roof It helps distribute the weight of any of the solar panels. It's not that heavy itself, and it's mechanically fastened to the roof. So once the polyiso is down, the roofers actually cut the TPO sheets at the bottom in the parking lot. That way they didn't have to have a roll craned up here, and they didn't have to work with 1,000 pounds of TPO in one point loaded area. Roofers start from the lowest point of the roof. That way the TPO goes and extends under the sheet that comes on top of it. It's called underlapping. It prevents a little ridge from happening where water could eventually find its way under the membrane. The sheets are laid out. A glue is actually sprayed on the back of the TPO to help it adhere to the foam, which is mechanically fastened to the deck. The roofers came through with a machine that was actually on wheels that shot hot air onto these seams and then kind of sealed it closed. It was really cool to see. Very specialized tool, much fun by all. One of the most time-consuming parts of this roof was dealing with these 5 skylights. It wasn't actually 5 skylights to begin with. It was one long one and one shorter one. We didn't want to change the structure. We didn't want to talk to our engineer and have him prescribe something to cut the roof up. We wanted to use the openings that were already there. So we actually closed these off and got these Velux skylights for about $350 each. They have a nice insulated dome on them. They're going to shed snow off of them. And what we like about skylights is they're not operable. There's nothing to break, especially in the rental unit. We don't have to worry about water kind of seeping in through misaligned gaskets, get someone on the roof. So in any rental property that we do or property that we develop, we try to do fixed skylights. And the way we like to install them is curb mounted. We built up a curb about 5 inches tall and had the roofers flash it in. They heat welded these patches. They had to go crazy on the corners. It's what needed to happen to make sure the roof doesn't leak, and especially at these skylights. So we're about 5.5 inches up, flashed these with a roof membrane, brought them under, dropped the skylights on top, a little bit of caulking and sealing, and that's pretty much it. This is kind of a cacophony of patches in this corner, and there's not really a better way to get around that. These corners need to be detailed really nicely, and things need to be underlapped. So this needs to be on top of this, which needs to be under this, which needs to be under this. So that way when water comes down, it's flowing on top of seams and rather than behind them. Sometimes it doesn't always work out. You get pieces like that, but end of the day, you have to belt and suspenders approach, and making sure that your roofers address these areas is paramount. So these are scupper boxes. They are the lowest point of the roof, and they handle every ounce of water that finds its way on the roof. So if there's ever a roof leak, it's probably at these scuppers. What we need to come back and do is get guards on here so we make sure we're not flushing any leaves. We're not really under any trees, but we want to make sure that there's some protection for anything that might find its way down these scuppers. One thing to note, we have someone doing our copper work. That means they're doing our copper downspouts, copper sill pans, and copper standing seam on the cornice out front. We needed to have communication between these 2 contractors first. So what we ended up doing, we ordered these TPO through wall scupper boxes, sent them to our copper guy, and had them extend the stainless steel discharge tube with copper. They actually stick out about 18 inches from the front of the building, and they have a temporary downspout attached to them, so that when our copper guy comes and connects the downspouts to them, he's gonna have compatible materials and have a really easy time making that connection and making sure we have a tube that runs through a wall that's gonna handle all the water and not be the weak point of this system. So these scupper boxes are an example of what we do as contractors. We're not up here actually installing the roof. We're not the ones on the ladders putting the copper downspouts in. That's not to say we don't do our fair share of work on this project, but there's some things that we have trade partners that we rely heavily on. This represents 2 trade partners. Our architectural copper contractor is doing the downspouts, the cornice, the standing seam on there, some of the copper sill pans for the storefront windows. And then we have a roofing crew that's here. This is where the 2 meet, and we want to make sure both of them have exactly what they need to succeed. It's not one of those things we want to get to the field and then our copper guy is looking to put in the downspouts and we have stainless steel going out, or there's not enough overlap, there's not enough material coming through the wall. So we actually got these scuppers. I had them sent to our copper fabricator's shop. He extended them with copper, and that means, we don't have to make it work in the field. We took the time, took the steps, planned it out, and made it work. And that's what, my interpretation of what we do as contractors is just that. One thing that's worth noting, if you have a leak in your roof, there's a 90% chance it's coming from your scupper box. They handle all the water in your roof, so if you have a leak, this is the first area I would check to make sure it's flashed properly, detailed properly, the lowest point of the roof, and it's not backed up. 9 times out of 10, that will fix your problem. And it might be time for a new roof, but that's a good place to start. We paid $25,000 for this roof, and that was with us providing the reclaimed polyiso. That sounds like a lot, but it's actually not that bad. This roof was kind of a nightmare to detail. Everywhere there's a parapet, there's brick walls, they had to address termination bars, 2 downspouts, and kind of a little bit wonky framing and 5 skylights. So we generally expect to pay $8 a square foot per TPO roof, and that's what we ended up paying. We went with great roofers. We have a long-standing relationship with the people that did this roof here, and we trust them. We know it's not gonna leak, and if it does, they're gonna come back and fix their problem.